Hi, and welcome to another edition of the EmpowerLA podcast, the podcast where we discuss all things neighborhood council with the people who live, work, and play in the city of LA. This is your host, Brett Shears from the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Thank you again to everyone who took the time to listen to our past episodes. If you haven't yet gotten a chance to hear them, you can find a link to those episodes in the show notes, along with other useful information related to this episode. Our guest for today's episode is Cindy Cleghorn, longtime chair of the Planning Committee for the Congress of Neighborhoods, chair of PlanCheckNC LA, and longtime Sunland-Tujunga Neighborhood Council board member and stakeholder. Cindy is a lifelong LA area resident who has been involved with the neighborhood councils since their inception. In addition to her extensive work with the neighborhood councils, Cindy also owns a small business, a print shop in Tujunga. In our conversation today, Cindy talks about the importance of using the neighborhood councils to bring people together from all walks of life to learn, share, and collaborate with each other to make Los Angeles the best city it can be. I hope you enjoy our conversation. All right. So welcome, Cindy, to the EmpowerLA podcast. Thanks for doing this interview. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I wanted to start off by really just hearing a little bit about your personal background. So, I'm curious about who you are, where you're from, either where you were born, where you grew up, and how you got to this point in your career, your civic life. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I was born in Glendale and raised in La Crescenta, and in the foothills communities. I worked for the federal government for a number of years after high school. Have worked in the healthcare related field and opened my printing business in 1982. And so I've been busy working most of my life. I started working really when I was about 11 years old, part-time, of course.
That sounds like me.
Yes.
Sounds like me.
And always busy with some activity involved with a camping club or
I can picture
in
camping.
Job's Daughters, which is a Masonic order, and so I was very active with that. I was a campfire girl. A lot of busy activities as a child. So, and just carried on to with a strong interest in printing. I was printing in my family garage for years, getting the communications out to all these different things. So as the technology advanced, I jumped in and got interested in that.
Well, that's cool. What did you do for the federal government? You said you worked for them.
I was a quality assurance inspector. So during the time when we had a lot of aircraft related industry in the LA area, so we inspected parts that the government purchased, even for the space shuttle and for the different military.
And have you been in the LA area your whole life?
Yes.
Yeah. So you, at some point, Sunland-Tujunga area became your home, and that's how you got associated with that neighborhood council, or is that your business area?
Well, my business grew, and so I moved a few times because of the growth of my business, and so we bought a building in Burbank. Mm-hmm. But within the first year, the city of Burbank took the building in eminent domain.
Wow.
So that's what brought me to Tujunga. And we hired a retired building inspector with the city. And he went down to the city and learned that the new ordinance known as the Foothill Corridor Specific Plan put a great deal of restrictions. And so a lot of things came into play. So that took me to the neighborhood council because then I needed to go to them, which wasn't certified at the time. This was a neighborhood council in formation.
What year was this?
This was 2001. Uh-huh. And the neighborhood council didn't get certified until 2003. So I presented before the neighborhood council at the time and had a lot of questions asked because there was opposition. My business was, they didn't know whether I would be an open business or a closed door type business. Right. And they were trying to get away from closed door type businesses in the community. That's the goal of the specific plan. So anyway, I went through the whole process, got the support of the neighborhood council, and went through every possible approval process that the city has at the time. So I'm very familiar with it.
So that's a kind of a baptism by fire with this neighborhood council system. Because I was going to ask you, what was your first experience with it? And that's a lot of people's experience. It's like, hey, I'm trying to get this thing done. And you're just talking, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it, but this is a print shop. And, there's a lot of, like you said, restrictions that come with it. So you see the role that the neighborhood council plays in this city process. That's really interesting.
What they were encouraging is the collaboration with the community, the neighbors surrounding me, and all of that. So it was a way of expanded outreach.
Do you remember some of the people who were involved back then? Are any of those people still involved with the neighborhood council system?
I don't think they're all involved. We hear from them from time to time, but no, some of them have moved on or not in the area anymore.
Yeah. So your time, you go back, you really predate the certification of the Sunland-Tujunga Neighborhood Council, but most neighborhood councils, if you're talking about early 2000s, they didn't really exist back then. They weren't certified yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, but now you're really I would say you're best known as the chair of the Congress of Neighborhoods Planning Committee. And this is the committee that is tasked with organizing the biggest neighborhood council event of the whole year. And it just happened. It just happened on September 9th. And I think it was a great success. So you should be very proud of that work. But how did you get involved with the Congress? How did that come about?
Well, I attended the LANC meetings, the Neighborhood Council Coalition meetings. That's the first Saturday of the month. We hadn't had a Congress in a few years at that time. And it's the point of the neighborhood councils to call for their Congress. So I spoke.
Just really quick, you're referring to in the city charter, it really says, it outlines this mandate to have a convening of the neighborhood councils.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Bonwan Kim was the general manager at the time. He was at that meeting. We spoke up calling for the Congress. I was that voice. And so that that started that going.
What year? Around when was that?
It would have been 2011 because we held that Congress that year was 2011.
So you really pulled the Congress from its dormant state to get going again, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What was your reasoning behind that? Why did you think that was so important to do that?
Well, the neighborhood councils across the city need to come together. They need workshops that they put together, that they have the things that they need, and that was the goal. We wanted the basic workshops, we wanted the intermediate workshops, and we wanted the advanced, and we also wanted the networking with the city departments. It's extremely important, and also the networking between neighborhood councils to neighborhood councils. There's so much that we don't know that neighborhood councils are doing across the city, and there's no opportunity. There's no other opportunity, at least as yet, unless it's in little spots, meaning, those closest to their areas, with the various
regional,
more regional.
Yeah.
So this was that to open that door.
And, it's amazing. For those who haven't been to the Congress, it's this one event a year where really all the city departments have some kind of representation. They're all very eager to be involved. They get a table into the rotunda of City Hall and get information out there, connect to the neighborhood council people, but, the city at large. So it's an amazing thing to see. When you were considering, what the purpose of the Congress was, it's maybe it's written in the charter a little bit. It's a little vague about what the actual purpose is. What were some of the considerations? What did you all think that the Congress should be doing back in 2011? You talk about networking, you talk about information sharing. Were there other points of view about what it should be doing?
Well, we accomplished because we had lost our general manager, and so we were in an interim general manager. So at the Congress we spoke up to encourage the Gracie Lou to be our general manager. We also encouraged and pushed for our 5 minutes so that we could have more opportunity. We pushed for the before that, even the council files. So those are some of the things that have been outcomes for the Congress. accomplishments, but that's extra,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you're talking about the 5 minutes before the city council.
Yes.
If the neighborhood council has taken action on an item, they should be allowed 5 minutes. So that's something you all
Yes.
accomplished.
Mhm.
And just more generally, you're talking about advocacy for these certain, neighborhood council oriented policies to really promote the stakeholdership and interests of neighborhood councils.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you have all been really successful. I remember, their talk about whether, and I think the city attorney probably had a lot to say about this, about whether the Congress could be an opportunity to really adopt, formal positions or what that might mean as a neighborhood council. Maybe not the Congress, but all the neighborhood councils talking about something. And we know LANC, the Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Coalition, does stuff like that. But the Congress really being the one opportunity we're talking about, upwards of 1,000 people being there for any event. So I know that what you all have done with the Congress has been amazing. The kind of turnout. Was this the highest turnout ever this last year?
I think it was in an overall turnout, yes.
Yeah.
As far as the turnout of neighborhood councils, I think it was last year.
Yeah. In terms of, representation from each of the
Yes.
neighborhood councils.
And from what we've gathered from the numbers so far.
So there are 97 neighborhood councils. Do you know how many were represented?
Well, we had all but one neighborhood council register.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that one wasn't there.
They could
It
have
just
easily
means
shown
that
up.
they may not have selected their neighborhood council.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a part of it. We talk about the registration process. We know how that kind of has its window. It's very tough. So a lot of people who don't know and truthful to speak candidly, might be frustrated by that process, don't know that this program is coming together over a period of time. So it takes a while to register for those specific workshops, to register, to actually put together the registration form and all of that. So you all do a great job, and I think people need to maybe better understand those kind of constraints that the Congress Planning Committee is working with, and I think you do a good job with those constraints. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So the theme of this year's Congress was diversity.
Celebrating our diversity.
Right? Why'd you guys decide on that theme?
Actually, the theme started really early on, and the point that I emphasized with the theme early when we had all come together and agreed on it was the diversity of the neighborhood councils. We have 97 neighborhood councils across the city. We're different geography-wise. We're different social, economic-wise. And so the idea is to celebrate the diversity of our neighborhood councils across the city. You can take that however you want to. We left it open, for you individually to respond to it or collectively. So that was the main start to it and the goal.
Yeah.
To try to accomplish.
So that's the kind of thing you all come to a consensus about, what should the theme be this year? You've had some past themes. I was looking through a couple of brochures, but I think that's a great theme. What does it mean, diversity? What does it mean to you personally?
Well, in the neighborhood council system, for me, I've had the honor and pleasure of meeting so many different people, being around the city, to see how other parts of the city are functioning or managed, whether it's from all the city services that we talk about, because neighborhood councils are to weigh in on the delivery of city services.
Right, that's a fundamental mandate.
And I see that it's not happening across the city. I see the frustrations. So meeting the diverse people, the diverse areas of the community, it's really been an honor for me, because there are wonderful people out there with the same and similar goals to improving the quality of life in their communities, and we have much to share. So by that, that to me is critical and important. So for me, diversity is all the different areas, as well as the people within them, and how we can share so that we can make our communities better. Because, someone else down in the harbor area may have the answer to the issue that we have going on up in the Sunland-Tujunga area, or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it just may be that light bulb that goes off that says, well, why didn't you do, or why didn't you that, or I know you can reach this person here or there, and it can help further you along.
Yeah, so you anticipated my next question a lot. Why is diversity so important, either to the system or the individual boards of the neighborhood councils? I think it's pretty clear is that you get to learn from each other. You have this opportunity to share ideas, and you can't really do that if everyone's the same, right? I mean, everyone's thinking the same.
It's amazing the experts that we have in our community. There are people who live in their communities who know their community better than the elected officials, because they live there. They know the history.
Right.
They know that this patch of land or whatever it isn't stable. I mean, just a wide amount of things. So it's really important.
All right. So you're also very active in planning issues in the city and within the neighborhood council system. You're a leader with PlanCheckNC. We just often call it PlanCheck. That's the citywide organization for neighborhood councils to really discuss these planning issues, right?
Yes.
So kind of a broad question, what do you see as the role of neighborhood councils in the planning process?
Well, I think it's critical. And in fact, for me, it was land use was first before the neighborhood council system, and it likely has been for many neighborhood councils across the city. So, as I said earlier, the neighborhood councils have experts within the community. They know the community best, and that's what needs to come out. So the more that we can do to engage people in land use and planning, hearing all sides of the issue fairly and completely, the better our communities can improve over time.
What, as neighborhood councils, whether as board members or as the whole board or individuals, what can we do better when it comes to addressing planning issues in the city?
Well, they need to be more educated. It's not the case of just stepping into a meeting and raising your hand and you're in it. There's more to it. They need to become informed with regards to the different land use documents that guide and how the decisions are made, because our role is advisory. So the more informed that we are, educated about our community plan, our specific plans, all these different details, and building and safety, the better that we can get through those applications or those improvements over time.
Do you think the neighborhood council system has a good relationship with the planning department? Do you think there's anything in particular we can be doing better to collaborate? Because I know that they really just started with their neighborhood liaison program. I don't know how active it's been or what's going on, but we have a former EmpowerLA employee in that position now. So I'm curious what your perspective is on that.
I think that we, as PlanCheckNC, have a great relationship with the planning department, because we have the planning pilot program, which gives us the applications at the same time that an application is filed. Mm-hmm. There have been a lot of changes, though, in the planning department, so we don't get the processes and things have changed through the years, so we're not getting everything. And one of the things in neighborhood councils, people want to be informed early. Mm-hmm. People will come to meetings and say, I didn't know about this. This is happening. And that's a big obstacle that we need to overcome. So while the planning pilot program is great, and we don't want it to stop because it gives us an opportunity to outreach with regards to a project, there are also the other projects that we don't see, that we need to have our foot in the door on those, so that they don't become a bigger problem later, or a lot of questions later, because we do want to outreach, and people want to be informed in what's going to impact them surrounding where they live or where they're walking and so forth.
Yeah. What do you see as there are many roles of neighborhood councils in the planning process, but what do you see as its main function? We're ultimately advisory bodies. We give recommendations, but We can do other things. We can organize, we can, advocate. We do lots of things. What do you see as the main function of neighborhood councils in the planning process?
Well, to review the project thoroughly, bringing the applicant and the neighbors together. A lot of questions can be answered in that process, in that meeting, or meetings. It could take several meetings. I also think that the council office and their planning deputies need to be involved. They need to be listening. They need to be present. And that I don't think is the case across the city. It changes. So that's critical as well, because the council office ends up being the one that the developers will go to, and they'll bypass the community. They don't want to come to the community because they hear different things, or they're afraid of whatever it is. They shouldn't be, but they do. And if you're gonna be elected to represent, then you need to be hearing from the community.
Yeah, and I mean, we can do a whole episode easily just talking about the planning process, even just as it relates to the neighborhood council system. I think for a lot of people, it is kind of either opaque because they don't really see what's going on in the whole planning process as a whole, or they don't really know the power of the individuals, whether they underestimate or overestimate. I think with the neighborhood councils, what we see often is people come to the meetings thinking that this is the decision that's being made, right? But then, as you mentioned, the city council office, because they have so much power over a given project, will really have this either larger, if you're talking about a relative say, or, the final say over something. So I think the more we educate, as you said, people, I think that's a great function of the neighborhood councils. So I'm glad you guys do so much of that at PlanCheckNC.
There's one more thing that needs to come into play, that there needs to be more visibility with, and perhaps it's something that the department could help with.
Department of Neighborhood Empowerment.
Yes, and that is building and safety. Building and safety is the first place that someone goes to file an application that ends up going to planning, and there's a disconnect there. So that's something we need to work on.
Pulling back a little, just at the 10,000 foot level, when you think about the mission of the neighborhood council system, and I know as a person who is involved with so many citywide entities, do you think we're achieving the goals set out in that mission?
I think that more people are engaged, and more people are participating in their government than 10, 15 years ago. Absolutely. Even on their own. We always encourage, or at least I know I do, but we do in a general level, for people to participate, even if it's not through the neighborhood council. Right. Weigh in, go to the hearings, go to meetings, write letters, communicate. So yes, I think that for that we've done our what we're out to do.
Yeah, well, we're at least improving it, right? Is there anything we can do to improve even more? I mean, if it's about engagement, more of that, right? But any particulars about where you think the system can do better? You mentioned that, to building and safety.
Well, credibility. I think credibility of those who become elected into the neighborhood council system. A lot of times people will look at it as a stepping stone to get a job, or to go and run for office themselves. Or just weigh in on a planning and land use issue that's in particular just one issue, single issue. So that dilutes, I think, the credibility of the system, or the neighborhood council itself. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see the credibility of the neighborhood council system raise up.
And with the credibility, you talked about maybe an individual who's using it as just a stepping stone or some kind of profile raiser. Is it really about a commitment to the system that increases the credibility, meaning they're, a sustained, not only interest in it, but presence? What increases the credibility? What's kind of the converse of that?
We have ethics. We have the training. We have to follow the ethics. We have the code of civility. We have to follow the code of civility. Things that have to do with the finances that neighborhood councils follow through on, we have to follow it. So all of those things are relative and important. So that's credibility.
Yeah, so you're saying if people really are just being willy-nilly about those things, they're not going to be seen as credible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, credibility is a topic that I'm very fascinated by. It's actually like a lot of my personal research in the world. But a part of that is about things like the numbers associated with it, neighborhood councils, so voter turnout, things like that. Just engagement numbers more generally. How many people are coming to meetings? Do you see that as a factor in this as well?
I do. When I visit neighborhood councils, and I see some that are small and just have a few in the audience, but I also know on a overall level that neighborhood council participation is driven by issues. We've in Sunland-Tujunga always had a great turnout with people coming out. Mm-hmm. So I compliment them for continuing with that. But it's a challenge, and it takes making sure that you have topics that are relative, issues that are relative, so that people will come out for those things.
So taking a step back, you've been a part of this system for a long time. You mentioned you've been active at the highest levels for a long time now. What is one or some of the most memorable successes you've had while serving in this neighborhood council system?
For me and my community would be our Home Depot issue. It's the most memorable. And the reason for that is because of the collaboration with the community overall.
What was the issue you all were dealing with?
Home Depot applied for a permit to go into the former Kmart site, and they were not declared a project. So that was the misstep.
What would that have entailed? Meaning they just kind of did it by right without any...
They were just going to move in and change the use, and our specific plan calls for whenever you change the use, you have to go through project permit compliance. So the point is the engagement of the community at large in that whole process. How the separation between the neighborhood council and between the community groups that sprung up that were pushing to bring it into compliance, and then the small handful of people that were like, just let it happen, that type of thing. So it was a very engaging process when you have 1,500 plus people show up at the local middle school to speak for hours and hours on end through commission meetings that are held in the community. It was phenomenal. So
the neighborhood council in that case, they were serving as kind of the facilitator to really open up this process that was kind of going to be.
We were a part of it. Neighborhood councils are the only place where you have open, transparent meetings. You have a meeting that is consistent every month. Mm-hmm. You have committees, all of that. And so when you have private homeowner groups, you don't have that.
Right.
So the neighborhood council facilitated to keep the open transparency to the whole process.
Cindy, be careful. It sounds like you're indirectly praising the Brown Act. You're going to anger a lot of people. Okay, so that's a great success story. Speak a little candidly. What's one of the bigger setbacks that you might have experienced as neighborhood council? And I don't want you to dig yourself in a hole, but really just an example of something where you might have struggled or wish had gone better.
I think the most recent thing for me is the councilman evicting the neighborhood council from our office space. Yeah. That had a huge impact, because not only did it uproot us in a very we were just about ready to go into elections, and we were planning all these great outreach opportunities to get more candidates to run. We had a plan in order, and we get evicted from the office. And on top of that, we then move, because we're resilient, and we did everything we had to do, and we carried on with our election process and so forth. We move in, and within the first 2 or 3 weeks, the office manager, person that we've had for years, suffered a major stroke. Mm-hmm. And so the whole continuity of the neighborhood council fell apart.
Yeah.
And that is, even though we're strong and we carry on as best we can, it did not lay a great groundwork for the new incoming board. And so to me, it's a setback. It pushed the neighborhood council. We can get so much more accomplished, and we were when we have the continuity and we have the structure and the traditions and the understanding, so that they have something to carry on as in their job, because they're volunteers. We're all volunteers, and we lost a lot of that structure.
Yeah. And I know people will be listening, will be curious a little bit more about the backstory of that, but we'll leave the details to the show notes. You kind of answered it, implicitly, but are there any specific lessons that you've learned from that experience? Or even the positive experience?
I think it's still in process.
Yeah.
Because,
still fresh.
Because out of that comes angered people who might not have been as directly affected, but they are angry. So then there's blame.
Yeah.
So and then with blame comes hate or bigotry or other things. And I think that's the process that I'm still analyzing or still seeing hasn't healed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like for that to move along and we have so much to do to make our communities better. And I always say that we're more on the same page than not on the same page. We want many of the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this system to voice those things and make a difference. So let's work together to make it happen. Let's work together, whether it's with the council person and their staff, work together with each other in the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, but stop the hateful things and the things that derail or take it off.
Derail is quite the pun to be using for your area, but
yes, I know. We want to derail that one. Yes.
That'll be in the show notes too.
Yes.
That reference. No. So another, broad question, but what's one thing about the neighborhood council system that you really want people to understand that maybe they don't?
Well, I've met, as I said earlier, so many great people from across the city. People come from all walks of life, backgrounds. Everyone's voice makes a difference. Everyone's voice matters. There's a great deal of resources out there for our communities, and so I'm hopeful that we continue to do and learn more and network together so that we can, help each other.
That's great. But what does empowerment mean to you? We're the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. These neighborhood councils are meant to empower people. What is that term? What does that concept mean to you?
It means I have a voice. We may not always agree, but to me, we have a voice. So I know that my voice or what I have to say will be listened to, or at least I'm very hopeful I'm given that opportunity to have my voice listened to, and not be shunned or turned off or thrown away. I think that's empowerment, so that my contribution or my question or my expertise is valued, regardless of whether it's something that comes out or whether it's accepted. I got that opportunity to speak up. And that, to me, I think a lot of people don't speak up. They don't want to be recognized. They want to live perhaps in their own little bubble. But this is a great opportunity to come and speak out. And their idea may just be the right idea that the city staff or city council person or somebody, the decision maker, will say, you know what? That's a great idea. We should take a look at that.
Yeah.
That we didn't think of that. And so that, to me, is empowerment.
That sounds very empowering. So before we go, do you have any final thoughts? Final thoughts about, your time in the neighborhood council system, this whole thing?
just that I'm hopeful that the opportunities, the door is open for not only myself, but others that I am associated with, whether it's PlanCheck or whether in the Congress Planning Committee and so forth. And the alliances continue in their work, and that those of us who've been in the system for and working in the neighborhood council system for years are respected and given the opportunity to participate. We absolutely have always wanted to bring new folks up into the system. We're not here, at least for me, I'm not here to stay stuck in it just because I want to hold on to it or whatever. But let's work together, because we can help to make the city better. We can help to make our communities better and ourselves.
Well, thank you for those thoughts. Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank
you
you.
do such great work in the neighborhood council system, really uplifting it. As my colleague John Darnell says, the Congress went so well that Congress at the nationwide level finally got an approval rating bump because you guys did so well.
Well,
they owe it to you. No,
Thank you.
just kidding. Okay. Thanks so much for your time, Cindy.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the EmpowerLA podcast. As always, you can learn more about the neighborhood council system at EmpowerLA.org, where you can find information about the Congress of Neighborhoods, PlanCheckNC, and many other projects Cindy and others undertake to make the city of LA a better place. You can also check out our show notes for the episode if you want to learn a bit more about the topics and people we discussed. And also, the EmpowerLA podcast is now available on iTunes, so if you are so inclined, please leave us a review so we can get the word out about neighborhood councils. Thank you so much for your support.